What's up, guys? My name is Fari, and I build systems that remove bottlenecks within businesses. And I've been documenting my builds for 130 days now, going all the way up to 365. And in today's video, we're going to be going through the video plateau. I'm going to be going through how, I've been thinking about these videos in terms of recording each and every single day, which now it is, gotten to the point where it feels a bit too autonomous. So I ultimately just realized that I am not innovating enough. I want to innovate a lot more into the daily videos on a day-to-day so that there's more creativity and also exploring different ideas and just sharing a bunch of different things that I want to experiment a lot more with. So we're going to be going through the signal, so basically how I'm finding the signal and what the signal points are. Then we're going to be going through the friction, how I'm breaking and creating friction to now ultimately bring new creativity, and as well as the awareness shift. What is the awareness shift that ultimately took hold for me to have this new perspective, and also taking a look at the architecture and as well as the leverage that this ultimately creates. So if we go straight to signal, we can see that systems are good. The systems that we've actively built in terms of recording and uploading the videos is pretty good. The videos basically you somewhat to some degree post themselves, and the cadence is also cooking, so that means output is consistent, but it kind of feels hollow, to be honest with you. I mean, the consistency 100% is super dialed in, but I feel like that creativity aspect of it, of just creating new videos that are super exciting in terms of diving deep into the things that I would enjoy to talk about for hours and hours on end, is ultimately what's becoming the problem. The videos somewhat feel like, hey, they're too autonomous, in the sense that, hey, I'm just getting the camera and just building out the boards, and then I'm pressing record, and that is it. I want to introduce a new realm of creativity and ultimately push the boundaries in terms of what I'm doing on a day-to-day and getting 1% better. And I think that in as much as that I've been posting each and every single day, it's been one of the things that has ultimately kind of sort of held me back now, and that is the trap of creative efficiency. When everything works, nothing moves you anymore. So basically focusing on or understanding to say that, hey, everything is working, everything seems super dialed, but ultimately it doesn't move me anymore. There's something that ultimately needs to change for me to get super excited to record the videos on a day-to-day. And that means trying new ideas, like I mentioned before, and ultimately not just doing it just to get done, but ultimately just test different things, because this is the way that I'm thinking about it as well, is 365 different data points that ultimately one of them has to blow up. One of them can ultimately change the trajectory for this entire channel, and they're not going to change it if I'm just doing the same thing over and over. So I need to ultimately have a new style or create something new that ultimately allows me to provide as much value as I have been doing in the past, at least I hope, and also into the future. And that means not just posting for the sake of posting, because now it feels less creative in terms of what I'm outputting on a day-to-day. So basically the question then becomes, how can I be more creative in these daily videos such that I'm just creating a lot of different things that excite me, and I get excited to talk about on a day-to-day, and keep that authenticity as well of being the systems guy, because I do love systems, and I think systems and processes are the moat in terms of getting efficiency and scaling your level of output, and also getting a lot of leverage as well. And how can I basically do this in a manner that is exciting, rather than just springing up a board and then just chatting all the time, and ultimately have a different mode and just try different things. Because I did say it in the beginning, to be honest with you, that I was going to try different things, and ultimately it's gotten to that point where it feels like the videos have somewhat plateaued, and now I need to just try something different. And that is why I'm introducing friction. And the reason for this is that systems are meant to amplify creativity, not automate your soul out of it. And I think one of the most important things is ultimately keeping my soul intact and not draining the creativity out of it. I think just finding a way that ultimately allows me to be more creative in terms of how I'm presenting these videos, and also just speaking on a day-to-day, and that comes from having more mental clarity and mental bandwidth as well. And I am aware of that as well, that I need to be able to dial in terms of creating more mental bandwidth so that my brain can think of different ideas and also share different things that I'm actively thinking about, so that I can, somewhat have every process not fall into the delay curve, but rather understanding that, hey, each and every single process, or most processes, have a delay decay curve where they ultimately decay. And that is what I don't want to do. I want to be able to identify it as soon as possible so that we can fix it, and then ultimately just innovate on that and keep the soul intact as well, and understand that the tighter the system, the less space there is for chaos, but chaos is where originality lives. How can I be able to create new ideas and different things if I'm not actively moving towards chaos, or putting myself in an uncomfortable position where I'm then forced to then have to be more creative. And that, I think, ultimately comes from trying a bunch of different things and not just posting each and every single day, because it does get draining after some time. But ultimately, I told myself that I'm gonna do it, and I know that I'm gonna do it, so I have to do it. And also understanding that now I just have to be more creative, have to bring more new things, have to bring more new ideas, because it's ultimately a marathon, not a sprint. So also understanding that, for me, one of the things that I ultimately did was optimizing for emotion. So I caught myself optimizing the emotion out of my own work. I never, fully got to that point, or I was starting to get to that point where I was, figuring out like, oh, now I have to record a daily video, now I have to do this, now I have to do this. But ultimately not having that thing that ultimately allowed me to, have the creativity and want to make these daily videos on a day to day. So it's basically asking the question, how can I switch things up and ultimately, bring more new, fresh ideas into the floor, so that I can ultimately build on these ideas and ultimately have one video better than the last one? How can I ask these questions and ultimately use that as a source of moat to really dial in the format, really dial in the messaging, and also really dial in the way that I'm speaking and also communicating as well? Because funny enough, the videos that I stumble a lot, I found more, push to building those rather than these ones where I'm like super smooth talking or not stumbling as much. I found more, more growth and more understanding in terms of creativity when I've been putting myself in places, or the videos that I've been stumbling a lot, because it's forced my brain to kind of step out that comfort zone and ask the questions of, hey, how can I shift my awareness? How can I then create something new that I'm not used to? And when I get super used to it, then it's like, hey, this is the soul is kind of getting sucked out of it, and it's about catching yourself early before that ultimately takes hold. And then now I'm just recording videos for the sake of recording, and I think that's also one of the most important things that I want to ultimately focus on. So then that brought the question for me, where did the awareness shift? And this is where I started asking myself, what if I broke my own system? And then I realized my system should evolve with me and not just around me. What I mean by this is ultimately understanding that I want my system or these daily videos to ultimately revolve or evolve with me in terms of my thinking, my understanding, and the way that I'm interpreting things, and also failing as well. What am I failing? What am I succeeding at? And also using that to evolve with me, not just around me to say, hey, I'm doing these daily videos, but it ultimately acts as a function around me, but not evolving with me. And then also understanding that, sometimes progress means reintroducing friction, and that means that I'm ultimately putting myself in an uncomfortable position in order to bring new creativity and also new ideas to the floor. And through this, I know that I'm ultimately going to be able to try different things. Some things will flop, some things will succeed. I know I had a video that did 300 views in like a few days, and I was wondering like, why did this video work? Maybe it's the title, maybe it's just something that was in the video in terms of the messaging, but ultimately, testing a lot more rather than just doing the same day to day, because that kind of, sucks the soul out of it, like I've been saying countless times in this video. And ultimately understanding that I want to shift my awareness and just focus a lot more on creating. I still want to produce, I still want to just build stuff and ultimately share a lot of things as well. But how can I then shift my awareness, by asking questions of, hey, what if I broke the entire system and I just had a new format that I was trying, and also different conversations as well? What if I just, do that, because I do enjoy having the daily videos or the daily conversations when I speak to different people building cool things as well. Those are like one of my favorite videos to film, to be honest with you, when I'm just chatting to different people that are building and also doing different things as well, because I get to learn as well, and I get to kind of, deepen my understanding in terms of different things, and also connect the patterns and have, those different patterns connect into the things that I'm working on a day to day. And also understanding that through this, I also need to architect. So what is my new plan? And my new plan is to build space for experimentation days. So days where I'm going to be ultimately experimenting different ideas, where I'm just going to have wild card days, if you will, and also rotating video formats every few weeks. So say, hey, I'm going to do the board format style. Let me change it up and do another format style, and also adding, somewhat of a review plus rebuild checkpoint every 30 days. So every month, what is the review in terms of how this past month has gone? Probably I'll have that up and running by the end of the month. And also as well as documenting the thinking behind each evolution. And I think this is one of the most important things in terms of how I'm gonna be formulating my new plan, because I want to keep things fresh and keep things, rotating, and not just autonomous each and every single time, because I think that also sucks the creativity out of it. And I want to be as creative as well, and also share different things that I'm learning on a day to day, and just make it fun, because this for me is my personal documentation log for how I'm going to be a year's time from now. So I ultimately just want to make sure that it's something that I would look back on and not get bored of, per se, but also find a lot of value in. And I think the most important thing as well is ultimately creating value and figuring out different ways in order to package that value as well. And also understanding that each and every single month, I think it's super important to have those review loops where I can ultimately just review the progress of the daily videos as well, so that I can also identify where the leverage points lie. And this ultimately means that, the leverage points lie in where innovation compounds when you reconnect with intent. I want to make sure each and every video has an intent. It has a problem, in the beginning, or a mission statement for the entire video, and then me just breaking down why, or the steps and different mechanisms in order to get to that mission, to the mission of the video, and then ultimately a conclusion, so that I can ultimately, have these videos built with intent, and also just a structure that ultimately is unique to me but also works as well. And also just bringing on new people as well. I want to be super intentional in terms of the guests that come on. I want them, make sure that they are also providing value, and the people that I bring on are people that I genuinely have a good relationship with, and that I just genuinely just want to, jam with, to be honest with you. And that means that also the systems without emotions are just machines. Focusing less on just, just running the machine, and also just understanding that this machine, yes, it does need to run, but ultimately I need to tie that with intention, and understanding that systems with emotion become movements. And when I add this emotion, to the systems, then I can ultimately create this into a movement that I'm ultimately building. It's a marathon, like I said, and it's not a sprint. It's such a long journey to ultimately get to 365, and it's going to take a lot. It's going to take a lot of creativity. It's going to take a lot of different, switching of different formats, different styles, and ultimately trying out different things. And a lot of things are going to be different a couple months from now, for sure. But how can I, ultimately keep the videos fresh, keep the ideas going, and also try a bunch of different things that ultimately also allows me to create as much value as I possibly can? Because the main mission for these videos is ultimately to build the thinking log, so Killer KSOS for all those that remember, and ultimately build this into a mode that documents my thinking and how I am approaching things on a day to day, so that into the future I can look back on these videos and say, yeah, like these are the things that ultimately built whatever is the thing that I built in the future. So yeah, if you guys enjoyed this video, make sure to check out my newsletter. Recently just posted a post over there. I'm going to be posting weekly. And yeah, if you guys also just want to connect with me, make sure to check out X, LinkedIn, Instagram. All the links are in the description, and I will see you guys next time.